oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. And then there's abortion. A difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up.
It's been nearly a year since Bill Maher fired up his all-out campaign against what he calls the woke machine, and he's nowhere near easing off the throttle. This time, his spotlight lands squarely on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's been crisscrossing America like a progressive GPS, spreading her message from coast to coast. But Maher? He's not buying the pitch. Not even a little. Buckle up, hit that subscribe button, and let's break this down.
I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
Here's how it all kicked off. Maher did what he's built his brand on, asking the questions a lot of Americans are already whispering. He zeroed in on AOC's relentless push for a hard-left agenda that many voters say feels disconnected from everyday life. His challenge was blunt. Why double down on an ideology that so many Americans see as divisive and out of step? Most politicians might recalibrate. Not AOC. She's convinced she's standing on higher moral ground, and she's not backing up. But Maher wasn't finished. What came next wasn't just criticism. It was a strategic dismantling. A no-spin, no-filter takedown. And trust me, it escalated fast.
Abortion. A difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him. And I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Maher argues this is the hill Democrats chose to defend. Debates most Americans never saw as complicated a decade ago. Questions about biology, gender, and language that once felt straightforward suddenly became cultural battlegrounds. Critics say when everyday Americans asked basic questions, they were met with lectures instead of dialogue. The result? Frustration, distrust, and eventually, ballot box consequences. According to Maher, it wasn't about hate. It was about voters feeling talked down to. And when trust erodes, elections follow.
Them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
Maher's broader point? Push voters into a corner long enough, and they push back. For years, Democrats felt secure in deep blue strongholds, confident their base would stick with them no matter what. But politics isn't static. Voters shifted, some quietly, some dramatically, and in several places, the margins tightened. Former allies grew skeptical. Reliable districts showed cracks. Was it a temporary stumble or a warning sign of something bigger? Maher frames it as a political wake-up call, one the party can't afford to ignore.
An 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why. Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
Then comes Maher's courtroom analogy. My lawyer versus their lawyer. His argument is simple. Voters expect elected officials to act as their advocates. When politicians appear more focused on ideology than everyday concerns, people start asking whose side they're really on. Maher builds this case point by point, suggesting that messaging gaps have turned into credibility gaps. In the court of public opinion, perception matters, and perception can shift fast.
And wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education, partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher. Yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
Maher also points to education policy as another flashpoint. Debates over accountability, school standards, and teacher protections intensified during the Biden years. National testing data showed significant academic declines between 2020 and 2023, especially in math. Parents noticed. Critics argued that bureaucratic decisions made in Washington had real consequences in classrooms. Whether fair or not, Maher says the optics hurt, especially when families felt unheard while politicians traded talking points.
Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer. A universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only a few identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person?
He also revisits other controversial proposals, from defund the police rhetoric to pandemic-era housing debates and education reforms. Supporters saw reform, critics saw overreach. In major cities, crime spikes fueled backlash. Economic policies sparked heated arguments over practicality versus principle. Maher's punchline: when a party loses the middle, it risks losing the map entirely. And in American politics, the middle decides elections.
And in 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities. So it seems fair that they jump the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience. But to do that, I'm going to need a good lawyer who fights for me.
Still, Maher's sharpest critique isn't about ideology, it's about connection. He argues that if Democrats want to rebuild nationally, they need to listen more than they lecture. Not just polling data, not just think tank memos, real conversations with voters who feel overlooked. His message isn't abandon your values. It's reconnect with the country. Because in a nation this diverse and divided, trust is currency. And once spent, it's hard to earn back.
All these issues, the wavering voter is saying to her lawyer, the Democratic Party, hey, so happy for you that you have so many other clients and that you care so much about their problems and all the pro bono work you do. But you're supposed to be my lawyer. The Democrats need to be like the lawyers you see on billboards. You hurt, we fight.
In the end, Maher isn't just roasting a party. He's holding up a mirror. He says Democrats drifted away from the voters they claim to champion. And until they close that gap, electoral struggles may continue. Redemption, if it comes, won't arrive through louder slogans. It'll come through accountability, adjustment, and realignment with everyday Americans. Because in U.S. politics, voters don't just walk away quietly. They show up on election day. And when they do, the verdict sticks.